Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we're tackling something huge, literally. We're talking about earthquakes.
I've been looking forward to this one for weeks. It's one of those topics where everybody has an opinion, but not everybody actually understands what's happening underground.
Exactly. And I want to be upfront, I'm not going to boast that we have all the answers today. This is a genuinely complicated science, and honestly, a bit of a humbling one.
Right, and we're going to try to keep our own bias out of it as much as we can. No fear-mongering, no false comfort, just a clear, honest look at what earthquakes are and why they still catch us off guard, even in 2026.
We've got a lot to cover today. We're going deep into the science, the history, the human side of disaster response, the engineering solutions, and even some of the myths people still believe.
So settle in, this is going to be a long one. Let's get into it. So, Andrew, let's start with the basics. What's actually happening when the ground shakes?
So the Earth's crust isn't one solid piece. It's broken into these massive plates that are constantly drifting, grinding against each other. Most of the time, that movement is so slow, you'd never notice it. We're talking centimeters a year, roughly the speed your fingernails grow.
That's such a strange way to think about it. The continents are basically crawling around at fingernail speed.
Right, but sometimes the plates get stuck.
Because of friction?
Exactly, two plates lock together at the edges, and stress builds up like a coiled spring, sometimes for decades or even centuries. When that stress finally releases, the energy radiates outward as seismic waves. And the ground, the one thing we trust without even thinking about it, suddenly betrays us.
And there are different kinds of waves too, right? I remember reading about P waves and S waves.
Yeah, primary waves move fast, and arrive first. They compress and stretch the ground like a slinky. Then the secondary waves arrive, and those are the ones that actually cause most of the violent shaking because they move the ground side to side.
It's wild how much research has gone into understanding all of this. But I don't want to berate seismologists for what they still can't do, because predicting the exact moment of an earthquake is still basically impossible.
Totally. Scientists can measure strain, map fault lines, study historical patterns, but nature refuses to give us a brief, tidy schedule to work from. There's no ticking countdown clock buried underground that we can just read.
What we do have, though, is monitoring. Thousands of seismic stations worldwide, constantly listening to the planet 24 hours a day.
And that data has bestowed something really valuable on us: early warning. In Japan, in Mexico, in parts of California now too, alert systems can ping your phone seconds before the shaking starts.
Seconds doesn't sound like much.
It's not much, but it's enough to duck under a table, stop a train, shut off a gas line, or pull a surgeon's hands away from a patient mid-operation. Seconds save lives.
That's such a good point. It's not about stopping the disaster. It's about buying just enough time to change the outcome.
Let's zoom out for a second. Earthquakes have been shaping human history for as long as we've been building cities.
Oh, this is the part I really wanted to dig into. Let's talk about some of the big ones.
So the 1906 San Francisco earthquake is a classic case study. Magnitude, around 7.9. And what actually killed most people wasn't the shaking itself. It was the fires that broke out afterward and burned for days.
Because the water mains had ruptured, so firefighters couldn't even fight the flames properly.
Exactly. And that disaster completely reshaped how cities thought about building codes and water infrastructure.
Then there's the 1960 Valdivia earthquake in Chile, still the most powerful earthquake ever recorded, a magnitude 9.5.
That one triggered tsunamis that crossed the entire Pacific Ocean and caused damage as far away as Japan and Hawaii, nearly a full day later.
It's almost unbelievable how far that kind of energy can travel. And of course, we can't talk about this without mentioning 2011 in Japan.
The Tohoku earthquake, magnitude 9. Followed by a tsunami that overwhelmed seawalls that engineers had genuinely believed were strong enough.
That's the part that gets me. Japan is arguably the most earthquake-prepared country on Earth, and it still wasn't enough to prevent the Fukushima disaster.
Which really tells you something important. No amount of preparation makes a country completely blind-proof against nature. There's always a scenario more extreme than the one you planned for.
And then, tragically, Haiti in 2010. a magnitude 7 earthquake, smaller in raw energy than Tohoku, but it killed far more people.
Because of poverty, weak infrastructure, and a densely populated capital with almost no seismic building codes in place.
It really shows that the size of an earthquake and the size of the tragedy aren't the same thing at all.
No, and that's a distinction we're going to come back to later when we talk about engineering.
Let's talk about what happens after the shaking stops. Survivors often describe the same thing: everything becomes blurred.
Dust everywhere, communication down, rescue workers moving through blurry, chaotic streets, trying to separate rumor from fact.
And that's where a different kind of bias creeps in. Not scientific bias, but human bias. Panic spreads misinformation fast.
People brashly share unverified reports online, and suddenly rescue efforts get misdirected because nobody has a clear picture of where help is actually needed.
I read about this happening after the 2023 Turkey-Syria earthquake. Social media was flooded with outdated addresses and false rescue requests, and it genuinely slowed down real efforts.
Which is heartbreaking, because those first 72 hours after an earthquake are the window where survival rates for trapped people drop the fastest.
But you know what strikes me every time I read about these events? Haiti in 2010, Japan's Tohoku earthquake, Turkey in 2023, the real heroes are rarely the ones acting with brashness, grabbing headlines.
No, it's the quiet ones. Engineers, volunteers, off-duty nurses, neighbors, people who form instant bonds with total strangers, digging through rubble side by side for hours without stopping.
There's something almost sacred about that kind of bonding. Disaster researchers have written about it for decades. Communities that suffer together often come out with stronger social ties than before.
It doesn't erase the grief, obviously.
No, but it boosts resilience in a way infrastructure alone never could. There's actual psychological research on this. It's sometimes called post-disaster solidarity.
And it's not just emotional, it has practical effects too. Neighborhoods with stronger existing social ties before a disaster tend to recover economically faster afterward because people trust each other enough to pool resources and share information quickly.
Which almost makes you think community preparedness isn't just about supply kits and evacuation routes.
Right, it's also about how connected people already are to each other before disaster strikes. So the big question, how do we fight back against something we literally can't stop?
Honest answer, we don't stop earthquakes. We adapt to them. And engineering has come a long way on that front.
Base isolators are one of my favorite examples. Basically giant shock absorbers under a building's foundation that let it sway instead of shatter.
Flexible steel frames instead of rigid concrete. Retrofitting programs going through older buildings and reinforcing them, boosting their odds of survival in ways that would have seemed impossible 50 years ago.
There's also tuned mass dampers, those giant pendulums you sometimes see hanging inside skyscrapers, like the one in Taipei 101. It literally sways in the opposite direction of the building's movement to cancel out the shaking.
That still amazes me every time I picture it, a 900-ton ball just hanging there, quietly doing the job of keeping thousands of people safe.
I don't want to berate cities that are behind on this. A lot of them are lower-income nations without the resources wealthier countries have. It'd be unfair to lecture without acknowledging that gap.
Agreed. But the data itself isn't biased by opinion. Buildings built to modern seismic codes save lives. Period. It's not about national pride or boasting rights between countries. It's just physics and better materials.
There's also something powerful in how communities bestow trust in early warning systems. Once people believe in that alert on their phone, even from something as brief as a classroom safety drill, they act faster, more decisively.
Preparedness isn't glamorous. It doesn't make headlines. But it's the single biggest factor separating an earthquake that kills dozens from one that kills thousands.
And it's not only about buildings either. Things like flexible gas lines, automatic shutoff valves, and even furniture anchoring in homes make a measurable difference.
It's the unglamorous, boring stuff that ends up saving the most lives.
Let's do something a little different for this next part. I pulled a few common earthquake myths people still believe, and I want to see if you can guess whether they're true or false.
Oh, I love this. Hit me.
Myth number 1. Earthquake weather exists, meaning hot, still, humid days somehow make earthquakes more likely.
False. There's no scientific link between weather and seismic activity. Earthquakes happen miles underground, completely insulated from surface temperature.
Correct. Myth. 2 small earthquakes release pressure and prevent bigger ones.
Also false, unfortunately. It would take thousands of small earthquakes to release the same energy as one major one, so small quakes don't meaningfully reduce the risk of a big one.
Right again. Last one during an earthquake. You should stand in a doorway for safety.
That's an outdated myth. In modern buildings, doorways aren't actually any stronger than the rest of the structure. Current guidance is drop, cover, and hold on, getting under sturdy furniture instead.
Nailed all 3. See, this is exactly why we wanted to include this segment. So many people still operate on secondhand advice instead of actual data.
It's a good reminder that being informed isn't a one-time thing. Safety guidance updates as we learn more.
I want to end on something a bit more personal, Elisa. After all this research, what stayed with you most?
Honestly, a kind of humility. No matter how advanced our sensors get, no matter how much data we gather, we're never fully free from being caught off guard.
We can reduce the odds. We can boost our defenses. But we can't be blind to the fact that the Earth will always hold surprises for us.
And maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. It keeps engineers refining their designs instead of resting on past success.
It keeps scientists chasing better models instead of clinging to old biases about what's safe enough.
If there's one thing I hope listeners take from today, it's this: resilience isn't about eliminating risk.
It's about how quickly a community can bond, adapt, and rebuild when the ground shifts beneath them, literally and otherwise.
And maybe it's also a reminder to check whether your own home is even a little bit prepared. Anchored bookshelves, a small emergency kit, a family plan, small steps that don't require boasting about being a prepper, just basic common sense. That's it for today's episode. Thanks for spending this time with us, exploring the science, the history, the human stories, and the engineering behind one of nature's most humbling events.
If this gave you something to think about, share it with a friend, leave us a review, and we'll catch you next time.